All right, we are live. With me tonight is my co-host Zach Donathan, and we have special guest Bob Stormer. How's it going tonight, Bob?
Ta-da!
You got her to work?
Yeah, I have look at this. I am incredibly, in some areas, not tech savvy. I got to work on my own, so I'm pretty proud of myself at the moment.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well,
Yeah.
we've been racing RC cars for so long and figuring things out on our own for so many years. I had plenty of faith in you that you'd get her.
I got figured out.
Yeah. So real quick, I have to say it sucks. Minnesota lost an awesome racer, and we all lost an awesome friend, Grant Olson. He's been racing with us for quite a few years. Yeah, man, it's going to be sad not having him at the track. He was just all about RC, all about having fun, hanging out with everybody, family, friends. There will be a celebration of life that will be held Tuesday, May 6th at First Memorial Watterson Chapel off Nicollet Avenue in Minneapolis. Visitation will begin at 11, followed by a service at 12 noon. So, yeah, man, it sucks when, we lose racers, but this one was a real bummer to me, but I mean, it's a real bummer to everyone in Minnesota. Usually it's, man, this one's rough. Anyway, now that that's out of the way, sorry about that, guys. How was your guys' Easter?
Filling for me.
Yeah, mine as well. How about you, Zach?
Mine was last weekend.
Yep.
So it was good. I got to hang out with family, friends. Kind of a scheduling conflict, so we did it the weekend before.
Right. Yeah, my wife's going to Vegas tomorrow, so I can finish wrench on the fifth scale stuff, and I'm almost ready for racing next Saturday. I got 2/3 of each truck finished because I got to get mine ready. And I don't know, Bob, have you wrenched on many fifth scales in your time?
I don't know. It never really caught on here. Even though we were everywhere, for some reason, we still have, different things that we stock that people do and do not want, and fifth never was popular for us. I'd like to run one. I think it'd be fun.
Hold on one second. I'll show you a difference here. So right here is your standard 1/10 scale size tire, standard tire. Right here is your 1/5 scale size tire. It's about the size of my face. So they're really easy to work on, but a little bit cumbersome. So I've been wrenching all weekend, getting stuff ready to go. But anyway,
how tall are those? Like 7 inches?
I would say 3.5 feet tall if you stand them on end.
Oh, I meant the tire. I was thinking about comparison to X-Max size XRT tires.
Yeah, they're I would say 6. It says on the side wall it's 180 millimeters by 70 millimeters. So it's
what's that in Bald Eagle units?
I'm not sure.
Got it.
Zach's pulling it up.
7 of that.
7.1 inches. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah,
that's a pretty common size. X-Max and Creighton use that same size.
Right, and the trucks are 40 pounds when they're all done. Yeah,
I'd love to run one.
Yeah, if you're ever in Minnesota, or if you're ever out, I'm ever out in your area with them, I'll definitely let you run one because they're
wicked.
Yeah, absolutely. So I feel bad because we were starting a good interview on the broadcast during the Vintage Clash. And I almost made you miss your race.
You know what, though, dude? That was the worst weekend of racing of my life. So it wouldn't have mattered. Some weekends are yours, some ain't. That my ain't. It was brutal. I finished. I broke every single time, and I knew that going in. You know what I mean? I knew I was going to break every single time. It's just how it goes.
Yeah.
Some old cars hold up, some don't.
Yeah. I had the new old car. I had the gold chassis team car. And I popped a ball cup every single run.
Yeah, me too. What do you think caused that? Like, we were working on that, and I'm like, how can I be going and not touching a wall and still snap a ball cup?
I think
I got a lot of trouble with that.
The grip and the torque and the twist through the corner, I think, because Senior and I were talking about it the other day, because Senior watched a lot of it.
Yeah.
And we're talking, he's like, I don't know. It's like we were talking about getting a ball cup counter up, but it would have been us hitting the button constantly.
Yeah.
Well, I think
I
it has
snapped
to do
one.
with
What's that?
I think it has to do with the additional travel and the
Mhm.
flexibility of the parts. So they just flex past the point. You really need like the Dubro style ends, like we were talking about, Joe.
Yep.
It's captured.
Yep.
But
And
then
that's the way it
that
is on
leaves
my
a
fifth
hole.
scale. My
Well, there's a
fifth
lot
scale
of captured ends. I ended up Jeff Millar from Factory Works. That dude was such a trooper. I mean, there's a couple points where I'm like, dude, it's over. I'm having the worst weekend ever. I'm tapping out. I'm just going to go hang out. We'll eat pizza with everybody. It'd be great. And he said, no, we got to keep trying, you know. And we kept going back and forth to the store. He said, try these turnbuckles. And then we tried this turnbuckle. And then we're trying to make B6 parts work. And then there were some Traxxas parts. And then we're flipping the steering rack upside down. And this just went on day after day, trying to figure out how to get the turnbuckles to stay on. Oh, it was just torture. Just torture.
So I was in the E-main for the big class, and because I popped a ball cup realistically, I would have been like middle of C to bottom of B with those guys, realistically. But it's, you pop a ball cup every run. So Drew Boyd put an HD associated ball cup and a bigger ball stud on, because I mean, I was so happy you would help me. But that didn't even hold a modern, like the new.
Crazy.
I had RPM ball cups all the way through the car.
Yeah,
and just on the knuckles they were popping. Yeah, Jeremiah's saying you got to think about our stock motors and 1400 milliamp packs back in the day went about as third as fast. Well, you were running NiCads, weren't you?
I ran NiCads and a stock motor, like probably around a 35 watt twister stock, brand new twister motor I'd been saving. Mike Walker passed away. He was always so good to me. So I thought, you know what? I'm going to represent for Twister this weekend.
Oh,
and I'm telling you, it wasn't as slow as I thought it was going to be. It was surprising.
Yeah.
But it doesn't compete.
No. Were you hitting those NiCads extra hard?
No, every time I made the car faster, it just fell apart quicker. It's just so sad. There was a bunch of us. I actually felt bad for the corner marshals during practice.
Yeah.
It's like I'd go lipping up to him. Hey, homie, I know you're working hard to snap my stuff on. Then it'd be the next guy, and he'd be snapping my stuff on. I'm like, I have now held up these guys 4 times in this 5 minutes here. I'm starting to feel bad,
Right. Yeah, I'll tell you this much. So I ran a reproduction. I think because it's not, it's ran, it's not going to be worth a lot of money. We have a parking lot series in Minnesota. I think I'm going to run it in the parking lot series. Why not? I mean, well, we used to. That's what we used to run in the parking lots way back in the 80s and 90s. Was that car, and it worked well. We're running slashes today. I mean,
just something cheap. We got a bunch of cheap cars we use here for that kind of stuff too.
Yeah,
you just leave junk around. You get a bunch of people around, and we got a bunch of old original slashes from the late 90s.
Okay,
and man, they're still great for that kind of stuff. Just tearing stuff up. They're cheap. They're free practically.
Exactly. Yeah, we were talking about the new brushless system they put in. It was kind of a mistake because
too fast.
Well, not just too fast, but they're also uncensored. So if you slap hard off of a jump or spin out in a corner, they'll brown out for exactly 2 seconds while it figures out, where the motor. And I'm like, oh no.
Kind of like the original Tekin did when they came out with it. It would roll backwards and start going backwards.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So we just started talking about this during the broadcast. What got you into RC and the hobby shop side of RC in general?
You talking to me?
Yes.
Oh God, it was a huge mistake. You know what it was the I'll tell you what happened. The way back in the day, my brother picked up it was a Trax Mustang. We were on like some vacation, pre driver's license when we were kids, and we tore that up. And by we tore that up, I mean I tore up his car. And I don't think it was much of a car. I think it had D-cell batteries too, even if I think about it.
Oh, D-cell.
And then we ended up with what's that?
Yeah, I was saying D-cell batteries. That's wild.
Yeah, and then we ended up with garage sale. I can't think what that car was called. It was just a garage sale car. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
And then
that
led to us.
Yep.
That led to us doing what was that? I think it was years later. Like I was working. This would have been like 83 or 84. No, it was right after the RC10 came out, so it would have been 85 because they announced it in 84 and it started shipping spring around Christmas 85. And that's when it really started. And we started making little parts, and I just, and I think all of us have that thing where you just want to make little things. You know what I mean? Where you like you paint the car, and pretty soon you're sawing on the chassis. You're like, well, I can make a bumper. And the first bumper I made for an RC10 was actually the bottom of a fishing tackle box because that's all the plastic I had. Yep. And I spent like 2 days carving that thing out with a Dremel, and I'm holding it up, and I'm like, look what I have created. And I went out, and it was snowy. So this would have been probably still in that spring of 85 when 10 came out. Snapped like a twig. I wasn't out there 2 minutes, and I broke this bumper that it took me 2 days to make. Oh, but it was fun. We like making that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And I had a lot of the early what I call parking lot stuff when we were racing indoors over in Williston when the Minot guys would come over.
Mm-hmm.
And it's my wife. What? And the Minot guys would come over. Some of the Minot guys like Mitch and McQuethy and I don't know if you remember Mike Stewart.
Yeah.
Stan Whitman. You remember some of those guys?
Yeah, I remember them. A lot of those guys were done in the 90s, but a lot of them, still race today.
Yeah. Well, I don't know what happened to Mitch. He just kind of fell off the page. But McQuethy's back in it. And I haven't seen Stewart in a while, but those guys really started 12 scale for us in this area because we were running in the mid 80s. We were running RC10s as was on carpet in this hotel in Williston, North Dakota. We were some of the first carpet racers, I think. Yeah. And it was the Wild West, man, back then. It was anything goes. Every weekend there was something different. Guys that sawing their cars in half, and before there was 10th pan cars even. I mean, it was so far back.
So I talk about this story. Sorry about Bob, but I gotta say I talk about these two stories all the time. So I remember the RC10 being the first car you could build out of you could have 0 team associated parts on it and still call it an RC10. And then it was crazy. But then, so back in those days, back when we started in 88, I would say the culture kind of ended with the B2. We had a really high volume of win on Saturday, sell on Sunday. So like we had guys that like Dan Alvarez and Jeff Brewstead and Clark Liu and all those guys racing at our local track, and they'd win, and they'd be like, hey, we have these motors at RC Warehouse. Hey, we have these motors at Hub Hobby, and all the shops would be packed on Sunday with racers trying to get the latest, fastest thing.
Mm-hmm. And that doesn't happen anymore, unfortunately.
No. Because it's all, it's all with the reliability of what we have now. It's so you lose a lot of creativity because back in the day, making the car reliable to last 4 minutes was huge.
And you made some of the parts too back then.
Yeah, absolutely. So 85, you're racing carpet. And so was Stormer Hobbies going by this point?
It had just kind of started because it wasn't actually Stormer Hobbies. There was a friend of mine right after the RC10 come out. We opened a store, so that's why I'm like, I think we're 40 years old, but I can't really figure it for sure.
Yeah,
but I think we're at this point now, a few months into 2025. But we had a little store and a glass shop. And a friend of mine So we had like a counter in this glass shop, and we called it Frontier Hobbies at first.
Okay.
And that's how we got ourselves set up. And we had an RC10 in there, and a little Yokomo, and those little blue Parma Nicads. All batteries were blue at the time.
Yep.
They were little Parma batteries.
Right.
And that's kind of what started it. The chargers. And that was the first store. And then we started making things. It started off with the 2-to-1 gear reduction transmission for pan cars, like the Predator.
Right.
That kind of started everything. We were making those. And then those went really good. And then me and another guy that worked for him, Bob Reinhardt, who now works for Stevie Fast. I don't know if you know who Stevie Fast is.
Sounds familiar.
He's part of that no prep drag racing thing. I was talking to Disco Dean about it. Anyway, now he's working there, and I just love that guy. He's so great. But we worked on these transmissions at his house, and then that 4-to-1 gearbox we made, and I think that was mid 80s, 86. Whenever the Cloudbuster came out, that'd be the date.
Yep, gotcha.
Yeah, and then so that's what really started it. But that, I still had a regular job at that point, but it was a solid part-time job. You know what I mean?
Oh, for sure.
And I think around 86 is when it became a full-time job. So really, do you go from the time it started, or do you go from the time it became a full-time job? I mean, where do you put it? But it's right in there, plus or minus a year.
Well, I always said back in the day, between you and Tower Hobbies, you had the best hobby shop ads in the frickin' magazine by far.
Yeah, we tried. So those people don't realize how many hours those took. Most of those ads took, like those catalogs. I brought some catalogs with. Those are 300 to 500 man hours to make each one. They're so time consuming. A lot easier now on the internet, where it's cut and paste. And, like back then we'd have to scan, and, it was crazy. I remember our first, the first Macintosh that we used. I still have it just because I'm a hoarder. Really? Our first Macintosh, a Quadra. No, it wasn't a Quadra. It was the one predecessor to the Quadra. Anyway, the Quadra came out, and it was, I think, in 1985 money, like almost $7,000 or $8,000.
Whoa!
And it was crazy powerful because we were doing so much image processing.
Okay, so you were actually, that's crazy.
It's fun. I really enjoyed it. I would think we were close to the same size as Tower, but they were slaying us on the other stuff because they do boats and trains and plastics. But I think as far as RC goes, we were close. But they were so good at what they did, and they were good for the industry too. You got to give it up, because I don't want to see anybody do anything bad to the industry or come in and do terrible things. And they did such a good job for the hobby. And same with like anybody that's around currently, like A-Main, Kendall, and those guys do such a good job. I'm so proud of those guys, and they came in, did it right. And
Kendall was a racer. Kendall, I probably still races, but Kendall was a racer, and he started A-Main Hobbies back in 2006 by parting out kits and selling them on eBay.
Yeah, I've never met him in person. I've talked to him on the phone a bit, but I've never met him in person. He seems like a great dude. I'm glad he's in the sport.
Yeah. So were you always in the Montana area? Because your Stormer Hobbies is out of Glasgow now, correct?
Yeah. We've always been here.
Okay.
The absolute middle of nowhere. And the Washington Post. I don't know if I'm coming across. You guys are so quiet to me. If you say something, I'm probably talking over you. So I apologize.
No, you're fine. I'm watching the levels, and everything's good. And,
and anyway, so we the Washington Post did an article, said we are the absolute middle of nowhere, based on north, south, east, west to a bigger location. So we are 5 hours west to a big city, 5 hours north and south, and 5 hours to the east. So, I mean, if you want to go to a Walmart, now this has changed, but if you want to go to a Walmart and heading south toward Billings, it's 5 hours. So it's a 10-hour round trip to go to Walmart. 10 hours. Isn't that crazy?
But I would kind of like it. The only thing I would miss, is I live in a populated area enough to where I can go to like jiu-jitsu and all that stuff. And that stuff I couldn't, but I do dream of living in the literal middle of nowhere.
We got people here. It's like if we drive, we were trying to club race in Billings for a while.
Yep.
It was so brutal. We'd leave her at noon Friday. You wouldn't even show up till 6 o'clock at night to a club race. And by then they're running qualifiers and practice. And we always show up late. And then by the time, if they get out of there at 6 o'clock at night on Sunday, we're home at midnight. We're weaving through the deer. You haven't seen another car in 5 hours. It's 40 below. You're not sure if you're going to make it or not. It's like death. You might not see another car for 5 hours while you're driving. It's crazy.
I mean, we've been there as well. I mean, deer in Minnesota, same weather we don't have the wind you guys have, but we're in that -30, -40. And it starts freaking you out when your car starts sputtering a little bit and you're like 30 miles from a gas station. Like, oh, crap.
And self-service.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So you got going with Stormer Hobbies. When did you put your store online? I know it's been a long time.
That happened in 96, about the time the internet started. But none of us knew what we were doing. The internet, I think, started in 96, and we didn't know what we were doing. And I think it was just like a page says, "Hi, we're Stormer Hobbies, and thanks for stopping by. If you need anything, give us a call." You know what I mean? I think that's how it kind of worked.
Yeah.
Because there was no carts, there was no encryption, it was the Wild West. You could go on eBay and leave feedback for anybody you felt like, it was the Wild West. There was crazy stuff going on,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Zach, were you in the hobby at that point?
What's that?
No, I didn't. Joe asked me when I started. So this would be my 24th year. So it'd be 2001. Yeah.
Yeah, so you missed all of this because I remember the eBay. So I remember the very first version of AOL that was for DOS, and you could go into chat rooms and just start booting people.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Oh, Slow's Fast podcast and Don Tolbert checking in. Don's got a good point. He's talking about some of your home garage projects. We'll get to that in a bit.
I love posting the dumb stuff. If you ever see me fall down the stairs, I'll post about it.
Yeah, you almost
make fun of myself. Yeah,
you almost did at the Clash.
Oh God, it was the first. I thought I was actually going to get to run the car. I was so excited. Nope, still broke. Didn't make any difference.
Yep. So, back in '96, you're online. The hobby shop is going pretty good. So, how do you transition from RC to lawnmower racing?
Oh God, that was some of the best times of my life. You know what? We were at the shop, and you remember Paul Harvey?
Yes.
Yeah, and Paul Harvey said, "Hey, we just want to let the world know that there's going to be a lawnmower race in Cut Bank, Montana," and it was like the first one.
Oh, really?
And we're sitting around, me and Evan Billingsley still works here. I said, "Dude, we got to build some lawnmowers and go to this race in Cut Bank, Montana." I said, we didn't know anything about it, nor did anybody else. There was no sanctioning bodies. It was just Paul Harvey announced lawnmower racing, Cut Bank, Montana, national news. So we built 2 lawnmowers. We built one we called the Mick Mower, which was hilarious, and the other one was the Garden Gangster. And the and the Garden Gangster ran an 8-horse, and then the other one ran a 12, or I think it was a 12-horse flathead. And we're running these. We get them built. I build a trailer out of an old snowmobile trailer, and we go over there. And I'm expecting, when we pull into Cut Bank, Montana, I'm expecting to see stacker trailers and pit crews and parades. You know what I mean? This was on Paul Harvey.
Yeah.
We drove around. I didn't see a trailer in any of the parking lots. I didn't see anything. It was so disappointing to me on some level. I don't know why I thought it was going to be like a NASCAR situation, like around for Kurt Busch or something. I'm like, all right, Tony Stewart's here somewhere. He's got to be. You know what I mean? And it was crazy. We get to the fairgrounds where they had it in Cut Bank there, and there was like 12, 14 dudes. That was it. Us and 14 dudes, and we had a blast. And that's what kind of set that whole thing in motion. And we ran. As a part-time hobby to this, we ran that up until 2000, and we ended up winning, I think it's 10 national championships with that. 10.
Wow. 10 national championships. Weren't you sponsored by Scott's as well for a while?
Yeah, the actual Scott's the Turf Builder Company. We had to drive to Marysville, Ohio from Glasgow, and like in short order, because that's how all that stuff works. So like we swung this deal to go over there and race, and we had to go to the corporate offices, and we had to put on a show. We had to have a hospitality tent at the race. It's us. It's me and Evan. We're RC dudes. All of a sudden, I got a hospitality tent, and we got like craft services going on, and I'm like, this is the craziest thing I've ever seen. And the TV crews are there because we were the TV darlings. I mean, oh man, we got a lot of TV time. And I'm having to learn all this other stuff. I mean, like how to get contracts with these people, and that's Scott's thing. We ran up until 2000, and I had parlayed that into a McDonald's. I parlayed McDonald's into Scott's, and then I was working on Home Depot. I was talking to the same people at the time Tony Stewart was talking to. I mean, that's how high up the chain were. Yeah. When you're on TV, you can get anybody on the phone. I mean, anybody. I don't care who it is. If you're pulling the numbers that we were pulling, like we were doing $7 million with advertising a year.
Really?
And when you're doing those numbers, you can get anybody on the phone. Anybody. It was cool.
That's awesome. So what made you stop motor racing? Because you kind of...
My kids.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, because my daughter was born in '93. Rand, who you've probably raced.
Oh yeah,
he was born in. He was born in '89.
Yep.
And then I realized I was kind of missing because I was RC car, so lawnmower stuff that, dude, we were gone constantly. It was just a fiasco. And then the minute TV hit, the lawnmower racing got nuts because the minute, and this is what I wanted to. I talked a little bit to Disco Dean about this. The minute the TV hit, it went nuts. Because your ego when you're on TV does not want you to lose.
No.
And we weren't getting paid. Like the Discovery Channel now, they get from when we were working on a TV show, CAS gets paid 10% of budget, right? So let's say you got $150,000 a week budget, CAS gets paid 15, divided out by say 15 dudes, each dude gets $1,000. Yeah. That doesn't do anything if you're racing on the street or in a no prep situation. You know what I mean? You can't buy a hub, a set of wheels or nothing. You know what I mean? It's tricky. All those guys, I don't know how they pull it off. It is so hard to do. Yeah. I just derailed myself. I don't know where I was going.
Just TV.
Anyway, that wrecked lawnmower racing. That was the point I was trying to make. Because it used to be you could show up with like a motor that cost you $500. You get you shave the head or something like that. And the second year of TV, now all of a sudden you get a $10,000 motor and a spare $10,000 motor and a spare, $20,000 this and a brand new trailer. And you got, you know what I mean? It got crazy. Yeah. TV is not everybody says that with if we could get RC on TV, it'd be the greatest thing ever. I'm like, no, it would not. Plus RC on TV is never good.
It's never good.
It's a real participant. It's not, I'd like it to be, but it's just not.
You would have to do it in that show F1 Drive to Survive on Netflix.
Yeah.
How they show 2 minutes of racing and an hour worth of drama. That's the only way that works.
And you would need a commentator explaining why these grown-ass men are upset about this rule. That, what do you mean my tire's shiny and his is dull? Like, nobody outside of the RC industry is even going to know what you're talking about.
Yeah. And no way. I mean, even on TV, there's no way you can do something like this with any kind of dignity. Hey, look what I'm racing. Mom, I got my sprint car and I'm playing with my toy sprint car on TV.
Yeah.
It just doesn't work.
I think you could. If you
maybe.
If you have like average Joes come up and they start the race, right? And the viewer can see how terrible they are and how difficult it is to get these cars around the track. Well, and then you have, your professionals come up, or maybe the semi-professionals and then the professionals to see really what it takes. Yeah. That could work.
So
it could. And there's some outside guys that are pretty handy. Somebody said, Tony Stewart goes to the Chili Bowl and slays. He's pretty handy.
Tony Stewart.
And somebody said Kurt Busch is pretty good with a wheel.
Kyle Busch is for sure. So Kyle Busch used to work at the Hobby Town in Las Vegas until he got
he's
his
probably pretty handy.
Yeah. Well, he used to work at the Hobby Town, and then he got injured like, I don't know, 10, 12 years back, and he picked himself a WGT car and was racing when he was injured because
Hmm.
he's like, I mean, and Tony Stewart, I mean, I still believe he owns a big chunk of Custom Works.
Yeah, some Cutman, I think, has been working there for years. I think it's Cutman.
Yeah.
And
I think
I haven't talked to Cutman for a while, but there's some Tony Stewart involvement. We don't stock Custom Works. Maybe we should.
Yeah.
But now that Oval's getting popular again with that new Losi Sprint car, might be time, you know?
Yeah, that and GFRP. And talk to the Velocity guys as well. They have a new car that's coming out that's just crushing everyone around the country.
Hmm.
So you go from lawnmower racing, you're still racing RC, you're still going with Stormer Hobbies at this point.
Also, I am glad you're keeping track of this because I will derail myself so fast. So good for you for keeping track of this. Okay,
yeah,
I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. It's fine.
You got to derail the derailing.
Oh God, I think I've got ADD, and I think the hobby gave it to me. I really do.
Oh, yeah. Well, we're going to talk about your collection here in a second. So how do you go from lawnmower racing, then you were drag racing Honda Civics? Was there anything between there?
I don't think so. I think the lawnmower racing quit pretty abruptly because it was kind of like we won back-to-back all 4 classes at the Nationals.
Yep.
And all I really wanted to do, and I remember this at the time, all I really wanted to do is just build a tree fort for my daughter. I'm telling you, that's all I wanted to do. I felt like such a miserable person because I couldn't, you know what I mean? I wasn't spending time with the family. Yep. I quit cold turkey. We went out on top.
That's awesome.
I kind of regret it a little bit, but yeah, I quit for all the best possible reasons. And I built that little tree fort, and we had a lot of fun with it. And I don't miss all the drive because we were gone constantly. I mean, there was I mean, it was a lot. I mean, we were gone a lot, and especially with the RC with it, because we were still racing RC stuff at the same time, and I could never do that now. I mean, this was 25 years ago. I get tired just walking in here, just walking around. I'm tired. I can't imagine keeping up that brutal pace we were doing. You know, it's like you're doing TV shows and we're driving through Minneapolis and it's, you know, some radio station wants to call in and we're on the early morning show with the rock guys. And that lifestyle was so brutally hard. I could never do it now. Never.
I'll tell you what. So a couple weeks ago, I had back-to-back gigs with Mod Live Media doing the commentary for them. Just being gone 2 weekends in a row the way I was, that alone, it's like I can't do it. Like, you know,
that's crippling.
It is.
That J Concepts race for me was the longest I've been away from here in 40 years.
Really?
40. Yeah.
And it
was 8 days.
How long of a drive was that back? Because you ran into a blizzard, didn't you?
Yeah. 3,200 miles round trip.
Oof.
Yeah. And I think I could have, everybody's like, you should have flown. Dude, I had way too much crap to fly.
Yep.
I was just short of bringing a saw and a drill press. I mean, I was taking this whole vintage thing about as seriously as a guy could. And I didn't realize what I didn't know, right? Because this was my first vintage race. And I didn't know what I didn't know, which I thought everybody just showed up with their oldest junk and just said, let it rip, boys. I'm going to run this old junk and whatever happens, happens. And I knew from some experiences, we had an old RC10T I brought out, one of my first oval trucks. And we put it out on our oval, and I'm making laps. Every third lap, I'd scrub the wall, snap, snap an arm, snap a hub, snap an, it's just brutal. And I thought, you know what, these cars aren't going to last on a track, so I'm going to bring all these spare parts. And that's why I had to drive. I mean, I had a full load of junk with me. If I was lucky enough to make the show with that car I was running with neckheads and the brush motor, my plan was I brought 4 packs of old batteries. I was going to restore on the spot like we did back in the day. Yep. And I was going to solder them all up and say, boys, I'm making a pack for the show, you know, just like we used to do.
Yeah.
And I had so much crap in the car because of that. Oh, God, it was just awful. It was just awful. Anyway, I did run into some snow and stopped in Fargo. There's some really good friends of ours in Fargo, and that's a good spot. I like Fargo.
Yeah.
Kent boys racing cars out there.
Right.
Mike and
for
Alan.
me,
Alan worked.
it was it was only 1,500-mile round trip for me. I was
That's still pretty legit.
I was gonna fly, but it's like I don't trust Southwest with my RC gear, and you have it way more than me, but I have crap in my Ogio bag I cannot replace.
Yeah.
Either I can't afford to replace it or they just simply don't make it anymore, and I use it, a tool or this or that.
Which Ogio bag you got? Is this that big one, the 9100 or whatever it is?
9800, yeah.
9800. I got to get one of. I don't have one of those, but I keep thinking I need one.
Yeah, I have mine
Nice.
set pretty good. Yeah,
Is it a good bag?
There's Zach, do you know the model of Climb bag that competes with it? There's a Climb snowmobile bag that competes with it as well. So wait till Black Friday, you get the best deals. Last year they had a blue and white like USA national ski team version. And really cool colors, and it was like $190.
Oh, that's.
Yeah, because
I
normally
want to do something. If the go ahead.
I was gonna say normally, they run about $350.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's what that Ogio bag is.
Yeah.
Well, if we do this, if we go to this Vegas vintage race, I'm sorry if I'm talking over you guys. I really can't. If we go to this Vegas vintage race, I was telling Saxton, I want to get a new bag and I'm going to fly. I'm not driving. I'm going to figure out. I'm going to take every screw on every car and go. All right, does this fit? No, not taking that wrench. I mean, I'm going to pare it down until I get it absolutely in one bag, under 50 pounds, and maybe 3 cars under 50 pounds with all the gear. But it's going to take months to get that organized, I think.
So let me give you the rundown on that.
Yeah.
So there's no way. So what I do is 50-pound check bag, and then I have a hard case roller that's my personal bag or my carry-on bag that they always give me a hard time about because why not? But you can fill your carry-on bag with things that aren't breakable, and they'll check it for free. And I fill that thing. It's got to be 70 or 80 pounds. And then I have a little backpack that has my radio, my charger, my batteries, my car, and a change of clothes, just in case my other clothes get lost. And I take that on the plane with me. And then so all I have is just this little bag, and they have all the rest. But that's so you can do, and they'll do that for free. They'll check that
Are you checking your NICADs too, or putting them in your carry-on? Or I'm sorry, your LiPo packs.
Your LiPos have to go on the plane with you. So if they give you a hard time about something, so I actually, not a great thing that happened, but it's because the airline sucked. But if you like my radio, they don't know that the battery can come out of that. And same with the cars. So I used to have my cars and my radio and everything in my carry-on bag, and then they're like, well, you have to check that. We're like, well, it's got lithium polymer batteries in it. I can't check them. Well, you got to take them out. So I was like, well, I can't take them out. I can take the things out. And then so it happened that they were like, okay, take the things out. So I've got my radio, my charger, because again, they don't know, my LiPo batteries, and then my 2 cars just loose in a bin that had plenty of space for the checked bag. But
dang, man, yeah, airlines suck sometimes. That's the thing. I've been loosely talking to Senior about doing this vintage race as well. It depends on what Mod Live Media needs me to do the rest of the year as well. Because I have a regular job and I only get 3 weeks time off, and I've used about half of it.
Oof.
Yeah, it's only April. So
yeah, you're in big trouble.
Yeah, well, I'm taking the wife to Chicago in July. That'll make her happy. Well, actually, by the end of July, I'll have 5 days left, so I'll have a week left.
It'll be all right.
But we're gonna see if I'm gonna see if Senior wants to go. He has a B3 that he put away after a Minnesota State Champs win. That would be good for him to run. He's got my buddy's RC10 that we ran. I had my own series back in 2012 and 2013. And when they re-released the RC10, it's like, hey, let's have an RC10 spec class. I picked a Reedy Wolfpack and a Tamiya J motor. And I'll tell you what, the old cars work better than that first repop.
Well, don't get Senior all excited about running like a B3 or a B4. I was just kind of chatting up Sack about the rules for that Vegas race.
Yep.
And he's kind of on the same page I am, which is he's not. It's kind of like, can you really look at a B4 and call it a vintage car? It's a really good car. You know what I mean? Kind of.
Yeah.
So I don't know. And they haven't released the rules yet. And Saxton was kind of, I feel like he's the guy ramrodding that program because he's got a lot of experience. You know, it's not a bunch of guys in the audience. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So if he's watching, dude, you just figure it out. All right. He knows. He'll get it figured out. He's a good dude.
I have a question for you. Because you have, what was it, between 15 and 1,800 cars?
Yeah.
Something around there.
Collection. What's that?
What?
Do you have it like cataloged?
No, you know what happened was, first of all, it's, you know, I've come to grips with my hoarding, you know, and I never should, this would have happened no matter what business we were in, but it's like, I love all these little things. Like, in fact, even the sprint car that I was holding up,
that thing's
this is
super
one of my
cool.
first sprint cars.
That thing's super cool.
Isn't that cool? Look at like right here. I don't know if you can see it.
Yeah. But what rims are those rims go for a mint?
Well, yeah, I don't know if they repopped them on the metallic car or not, but these are MRP front tires. These are MRP 427s, 4027s. And we raced these things so much. The original sprint cars.
Yes.
Anyway, I can't bring myself to sell this car. Look how cool it is.
Yeah.
So that's what started the whole thing. I'm like, well, I can't sell that. I can't sell that. And pretty soon I'm looking around, I'm going, I need to sell some of this stuff because there's too many cars. And then it's taken up most of a 2,500 square foot building. And oh my God, it's just, I was going to start this museum. And the problem with it is how much of a car is a car. Like I brought this up because he is also a hoarder of epic potential or epic proportions. I mean, the dude knows how to hoard. He's right there with the rest of us. Yeah. And it's not just like guys like me and Kirby. There are dudes come the woodwork, I think, that make Kirby and I look like amateurs in the hoarding of RC cars. There was some of you guys might remember there was a dude in North Dakota passed away and his daughter had to sell off his hoard. And some of you guys remember that. Dude's name was Larry. It was Tamiya. It was like 2 or 3 years ago.
I vaguely remember, and it was a lot.
Yeah, and the auctioneer guy that got behind it, I told my wife, I said, if I pass, you find this guy. Because he really did a good job. But there was so much stuff. I'm looking at him going, how did I not even know this guy? He was less than 3 hours from here. And his hoard was epic. I mean, it was impressive. I didn't know anything about it. And then there was a couple of years ago, this German magazine did an article on me, and I showed some of our pictures. And within not even a month of the magazine coming out, some dude came out of the woodwork on some internet forum and said he had 6,500 cars. And they were posting pictures of it. And I'm like, I believe that he does have 6,500 cars. 6,500. That's like, you got to buy, what is it, 20 of them a day for so many years? It was an incredible amount. And I was talking this over with Kirby. And I said, how do you get to that point where you have 6,500 cars? Or even like, why don't we have like a Guinness World Record? This is where Kirby and I had a little discussion. We're like, so what constitutes a car? You know what I mean? What constitutes an RC car to the Guinness Book of World Records? Is it a frame? Is it a frame with tires? Is it a frame with a motor speed control and a servo, but no body? Is it a car if it doesn't move under its own power, but could? You know what I mean? So how much of a car is a car? Can you share a radio, or does it need to have its own specific radio, 100% a whole setup? How much is a car? And that's what you could spend, and it's any of us that are hoarders, you would spend, oh my God, decades trying to get them all to run. Decades.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that
can't be done.
Yeah, it sounds like a lot, but I mean, I'm sure you have cars from the beginning till present that are, you know,
I still got most of the parts of my first RC10. I think I had most of it.
Really? That's awesome.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I don't have that, but my dad has my best friend's car, and that's pretty close. You know, like senior and I started in 88. And I met my best friend in 89, and we have that car in our collection.
Nice.
So what is your thought about like all of this reproduction and all that? Because there's some that are like legitimate reproductions and like, you know, modern plastics, but then there's a few of them that they're taking a little bit of creative, like that Yokomo YZ10 with the floating servo mount and the battery box for a shorty, you know. So
and
what
like
are
the
your
Ultima.
yeah.
I don't know what to make of it. I know the most important thing is to get dudes excited, get them to the track, and enjoy the hobby. That is the number one thing. And if repopping cars does that, then it's a positive thing. You know, it's the right thing to do. But the hoarder in me that had a lot of these vintage RC10 parts is going, hey, thanks. You know what I mean? You know,
Yeah.
rims that I've been hoarding, and I thought I could maybe trade it for something later down the road. Is only worth $15 when one was worth $50. You know, but it has made more people into it. You know what I mean? Kind of. But you could see on eBay, RC10 prices went down. A lot of the vintage stuff went down, but interest in the hobby is up. So is that a negative or not?
Depends if you have enough to sell. But yeah, I think the what's the gold aluminum wheels? I think those are still going for like $500 a set.
Oh, Technocrafts.
Yes.
Yeah, I got. Yeah, those are, you can find those $400 to $500. There's a guy's knocking them off, but you can tell the difference. But at some point, even the most hardcore guys will look at it and go, I don't know, man. It's on the shelf, and only I know they're knockoffs. I'll take the $100 pair. You know what I mean?
Sure. Yeah, let me see here. So
I'm glad you're keeping track.
Car, Bob?
Yeah. Me, I think the most recent. Well, the two we built for the that I didn't get to run for the J Concepts race. I ran. I'll tell you what we did is, and this just relates to me. We used to go to these big races, and we'd pick classes, and we'd go and try to just really enjoy what people see. So, in other words, if there's a car that wasn't popular, like the Nissan King Cab when that came out, I'd put 2 or 3 of them together, give them to the guys, and we would just show and just see how far we could make it and not with a Nissan King Cab. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's so fun to do it that way because it doesn't matter win, lose, or draw. You didn't take last. You know, and that's your only goal. You had a lot of fun with the car. You didn't spend a lot of money on it. There's not a lot of aftermarket parts for it. It's a Nissan King Cab. I mean, there's nothing you could do to it. And we went out to the Hank Perry race, the Pacific Northwest race. Shit, I put one of them in the show. This was way back in the when it first came out.
That's cool.
Or we'd race Traxxas Hawks.
Oh, I love
how far back you go.
I love the truck that was based off of the TRX 3.
What was that?
Was that a Blue Hawk?
Oh, man. I don't have a lot of Traxxas. We sold a lot of that stuff, but I never really hoarded it.
Well, a lot of people now. A lot of people
blue
now.
Though you're right. Blue was in the title. I got a box with one of them in here somewhere.
Jeremiah SRT.
Is it
the SRT Jeremiah? And Jeremiah's he started around the same time as me, so he's got a pretty good. And we used to race together all the time. The Blue Eagle. That's what
Blue
it was.
Eagle. There you go. Woo.
Well, a lot of people don't remember that Traxxas is rooted in racing. You know, they see.
And you know, they rooted in racing, and then they just passed by, all but invented short course truck racing. Literally invented, as far as I'm concerned. Left.
I mean, hold on one second. This guy is what we had for short course back in the day. That Tamiya. That's what we had. I was going to race that in that classic plastic, but it's like, man, we built this in my bedroom when I was 13 years old. I couldn't bring myself to put it on the track.
And it probably wouldn't have worked good, them tires. Although those motors are only putting out 25 watts if it's a silver can. It'd have probably held up.
They had a spec motor for the class that you had to buy.
Oh, yeah. Kirby had those motors made.
Yep. So
I was going to get one of those. I forgot. Kirby, send me one of them motors.
yeah. Oh, Jeremiah says the TRX 1 and the TRX 3 were sweet. He wants another one. He only has the remnants. Yeah, you know, I wonder how many like do you have your RC collection like kind of sorted like Team Associated over here? You got your Losi over here. You have your Trinity on road cars over here and all that stuff, or is it just
Kind of. Yeah, it's kind of like I got a couple of shelves for vintage radio. You know, like the ones before there was you know, the pistol grip radios.
Yep.
You guys would take the brown box radio and put a slot car controller on the back of it with a bunch of linkages. Oh, it's so cool. And I try to hoard those when I see them because kind of handmade, you know, they're kind of unique.
Yeah.
And then so everything's kind of sorted by that. So I got their shelves of radios. I had shelves full of RC10 transmissions because there were so many versions of RC10 transmissions. You know, J car and the chain drive and the team pit stop, and there were so many versions. And so I had bunches of those, and then it kind of goes into those, and it goes into dirt cars. I got my hands too far together. And it goes into dirt cars, and it goes into pan cars, 12th and 235 pan. 235 pan is my favorite class.
Mine too.
And then 12th cars. Yeah. And I never did much with oval. I don't know. It just seemed to me like it was a narrow 235 car. It didn't do anything for me, even though it's kind of the same parts, you know?
Well, so the past 2 years I've been running dirt oval, and I love it. It's so much fun, but I had to quit because it screws with your consistency for other racing because you're on the track for such a short period of time. You're on the track for 2 to 3 minutes at most. So it's like, yeah. Well, our local track runs 2-minute and 15-second qualifiers, and they run 50-lap A mains, which is 3 minutes, 3.5. Something about that.
That's too little.
It is, but I mean, he's trying to make it as close. Like, so the reason is 2 minutes and 15 seconds. He wanted the qualifiers to be around 30 laps. So he's trying to make it like real dirt racing. I understand what he was doing. It just destroyed my consistency. It's like, and I could watch my graph. I mean, it's cool what you can look at on live time. I would watch my graph, and for 2-3 minutes, I'd be consistent, and then it would look like a heart rate monitor after that.
I take some of the credit for that consistency rating, making it into the software.
Really?
We did a bunch of RC Tech threads based on that way back in the day.
RC Tech.
Yeah.
So you haven't really been racing since, what was it? The Vintage Clash was your first race since, wasn't it like 2014, 2015? You've kind of been
first off-road. We were still doing 12 scale touring and semis.
Okay.
And I tell everybody, I'm like the homeless guy here at work. I'm like, hey man, we're going to the break. Can I borrow a car? You know, I'm that guy. I never have a car ready. And so I'm always like, hey, you're going to run that you going to run that Trans Am? Can I run that car? Like, well, I was going to run it, but can I run it? Do you mind if I run your car? So I'm like a homeless guy. But where was I going? Oh, so 2014, you mentioned it, was that was the year Reedy passed away.
Yep.
So we went, we did a really good, we went up to the Pacific Northwest, raced the Hank Perry in 2014. That was, I think, my last off-road race in 2014. And we built 27 new cars for that race.
What? 27?
Yeah. Yeah, and I'll tell you what happened was, this started when we were racing up in Canada. And we called it the True Iron Man. It's where you would look, it was me, my son Brandon, and another guy that works here, Evan. And we would enter every class. And there'd be one or two other dudes at this race would enter every single class. And the goal was, it's such a ridiculous thing to do. You don't have time to sit down. We had, they make those 4-port chargers, those more inexpensive, cheap chargers.
Yep.
And each of us had 2 4-port chargers and these 5-foot leads. and you're standing there on 8 foot of pit table, and you're walking from one car to the next because you're running 8 cars. And you're finally you're like, hey, little buddy, listen, if I pay you $50 for the day, every time they call my name, can you corner marshal? Can you help me out, little bro? And you're just everything you can do to run as many cars as you can. And that's what started that whole thing. And that's why we ended up with so many cars at the Hank Perry, because we were trying to run every single class. And I everybody should try it once, but it is hard mentally because you're constantly up. And if something really bad happens to a car, you don't have time to fix it. So you either run it broken, bent, or pulling real bad to one side and you can't explain why, or you got a hunk out of a tire and you don't have time to true it. And you're like, listen, I'm missing most of a tire. I got to go. You know what I mean? It's really kind of fun, but it's hectic. And we did that a lot in Canada. I bet we did it 6-8 times. And we'd go.
Everything drives so differently too. So it's like it would be fun. But I couldn't imagine going from like 12 scale mod to like Euro truck.
We need a new race. Like, we don't need a new race, but let's start a new race. I was gonna say something else, but I won't do it on live. But it's called the True Iron Man in honor of Bob Stormer.
Yeah,
and there's gonna be 6 classes, and you have to run every class.
Oh, that's too simple. 6 is too easy.
Okay.
It's got to be 8 or 10. You got to be in.
Oh. Okay.
It's got to be brutal.
Classes.
Yeah.
And
like we were racing, you're running Truggy and
that sounds just insane. I have
well,
trouble running.
that. Like there was so much in Canada. We had some really fun classes. That Northern Canadian Indoor Championship Series. They had some great classes. Like Mini Cooper, that's what started us racing Mini Cooper. They did those up there. They had another Silver Can class, which was awesome. It was, and this was quite a few years back, but it was anything goes. That's it. You get a Silver Can, you could run it in.
Nice.
It was rubber tire, so it had to be something rubber tire, like an F1 car or a touring car. But it was anything goes Silver Can, and they just had a lot of funner classes. Like 235 Pan was still kind of popular, I think, up until about 2005 or 7 in Canada, which is a shame because that was such a fun car.
I tried bringing 235 Pan back in 2014 or 2015, and so we were doing, and I didn't realize how insane this was, but it works so well. We were running the 13.5 2S configuration. That thing was ballistic.
Yeah.
But in a good way. The car handled it just fine. It's just a big pan car. It drove like a 12 scale.
Mm-hmm.
It was
the last time we ran. Go ahead.
No, I was just saying it was a lot of fun. And I took pictures of it, though, by my dad's 235 millimeter Delta Villain. And my 235 millimeter, and mine was so much smaller. It looked like my dad's car looked like a 10 scale, and mine looked like a 12 scale in comparison.
Those were the days. Even in Canada, we brought a radar gun to one of those events, and it wasn't even LiPo yet. We were running like nickel metal and some mod motor, and we were going 55, 60 miles an hour indoors on carpet.
Absolutely.
Years ago, 60 miles an hour.
Yeah, and people hear that now and they're like, "Oh my God, it sounds unmanageable." But the cars, 12 scale is really the only ones that use foam tires now. Mm-hmm. Foam tires made everything so much better to drive. It was very unfriendly getting people into the hobbies because you got to buy a truer, you have to do this, you have to do that. But man, anything with a foam tire, I loved it. A scale on road. Better. Yeah. Did you ever do much A scale on road?
I wanted to so bad. We did a bunch of 10th. There was a guy in Minot, North Dakota, named Marlon Lenton, started a big asphalt oval.
Yep.
And we raced over there a lot. And they started out with quarter scale cars, and it ended up being like 10th scale Pan and a little bit of 12 scale. And then they They put a little off-road track in there, and then we started doing nitro 10th cars, like these little off into 4-wheel drive cars.
Yep.
And so that was as close as we got, those little nitro cars. But we did our main one time with those things, and that was pretty cool because he'd start, with a full set of tires, or he'd like true your insides down. You know what I mean? So you had a big outside tire.
Yep.
And as the main would go on, you know what I mean? They'd even about halfway through and then get small at the end. So your car would start out looping, and then toward the end it'd be pushing a little bit because your outside tires got small.
Right.
And that was as close as we ever got to run an A scale was running that kind of stuff. But I really enjoyed it. But if you're not good at nitro, you suffer. It's
I know. I'll tell you what. So in the early 2000s, Senior and I ran a lot of A scale nitro. And we were so lucky to have like Jeff Brewstead help us and Yari Teskila.
Was he an 8th guy, Yari? I thought he was a 12th guy.
Yari ran a little bit of nitro on road in the summertime because he lived in Minnesota and there wasn't any carpet on road going on. So he did a little bit of 8th. He did a little bit of 5th scale on road. He did a mostly 10th scale touring nitro. But, the way Jeff and Yari could tune a car, it really helped us out a lot. But Yari's car was ridiculous. So at one of the last Minnesota races, it was one of the last. We had cops show up because we had permission to be there, okay? But there was a line of townhomes behind, and you could hear the bounce off of those townhomes.
It is loud, yeah.
Yeah, so the cop radared us, and his regular radar gun wouldn't pick it up. So we had to back it up and get it off the back radar. And my A scale on-road car would hit, depending on how I hit the straightaway, between 75 and 80 miles an hour. His 10th scale touring car was right around that 70, 75 mile an hour. And it's so much, 200 millimeter touring car.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and again, foam tires, the cars handled it so well. What was that?
It's just little tires too.
Yeah. Well, with the nitro, so the tires, we would start them for a half-hour main, we'd start them at 77 millimeters for the A scale on-road, and they would be at like 73 by the end of the half-hour main. And then you could run a qualifier or two on them at the next race, and then you would have to have a fresh set. So, but anyway,
I wish we'd have done some of that. I never did do it.
Yeah, when it comes back, so they're talking about putting a track back in Lincoln, Nebraska, which is 7 hours away from me. I'm thinking about it. If they get a track back, I'm seriously thinking about it.
Which discipline? Asphalt?
Yeah, A scale on road, nitro.
Oh, 8 scale on? Oh, that's expensive, Joe.
No, I don't care. I loved it so much when I did it.
I like the way you're thinking.
Well, that's the thing. It's
money is not the object.
I run a 5th scale. My
true.
No, this is a different level. Like, if you get into it, the guys that are good, are dropping tons of money.
Yeah,
like you gotta quit the rest of your RC stuff to fund the 8 scale on road.
Well, like my 5th scale, my motor, it's a 10.5 horsepower Zenoa, and yeah, that was $850. My pipe was $270. A set of tires for that thing is super expensive. 5th scale's expensive.
Initial buy-in's expensive.
I've ran A scale on road, and the tires still cost the same. So $35 to $40 for a full set of tires. I will run those sons of bitches all day long.
Nice.
That's so cheap. It's so cheap. It's the motors which suck.
Yeah. Well, it's like I tell anybody, they're like, "Well, the RC hobby's so expensive." I went, "Have you priced out a good dirt bike lately? They're $10,000, $12,000. A good sled will run you 25 bills." I mean,
I
it is
was
kind of a bargain.
I was looking at running dirt oval locally, full scale, like street stock or super stocks. They're all over Facebook Marketplace for under
Yeah,
10,
I see them all the time. Yeah.
but they cost $700 a night to run. So I
We
really,
rented. There was a guy, Bismarck, Ivan ran the track over there. I don't know if that guy's still around, but when Legends were first still a thing, he was trying to get everybody to run Legends.
yep.
And he showed up and he said, "Hey, listen, man, I'll rent your car for $200 a night." And I went, "What?" Yeah, it's $200 a night. I said, "I get to drive the car. I don't have a trailer to do nothing. I show up as a gentleman, get in the car, drive. I don't have to do nothing. I ain't got a wrench on it or nothing." He says, "Yeah." I said, "Sign me up, dude. That'd be the cheapest racing I've ever done in my life."
Exactly.
And what a bargain that was. And I think Legends, if you don't take it real seriously, is still a pretty good deal. I mean, you're going pretty, and now
they are.
now they're running sport compacts and that kind of stuff.
Well, the problem with Legends, Bob, I want to say 2 years ago, they opened up the motor rule. They used to have a sealed
did they?
motor. Yeah,
Yeah.
so I looked into that as well, and they screwed it up. they
See,
always
even a mod, if you're going to get a mod, you're going to spend 40,000-50,000 on a mod. And you
Yeah.
really need a crew. You really can't do it by yourself. And
I know.
Now you got
Yeah.
3-4 people you're dragging with you to the track.
So speaking of racing full scale cars, you raced Honda Civics back in what 2008? How long?
Yeah.
'Cause-
It was about 13 or 14. We were drag racing them. We hooked up. I just got lucky and hooked up with the guys that ended up being the fastest guys in the world with Honda Civic. And that's the guys from Speed Factory.
Yep.
And they're out in Tacoma. And that they own all records now. They are the guys. And it's so cool that, when I first got to know these guys, they were just some dudes working out of some storage units. And it was Kevin and Ricky, and they were working out of James. And then they brought in Matt, and there was a bunch of dudes there. And we were their first pro build, because they were just still starting out. But I could see that these guys knew what they were doing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They were building these D16, what they call a Suzuki Vitara build, where you put in Suzuki Vitara 1.6 liter pistons in these. I think they were 1.6 pistons in these other Honda motors, and it created low compression engine, which was good for boost. And you could take a 1.6 and shit. These guys were making, I think it was 400 to 600 horsepower on these little tiny motors.
Yep.
It was so cool. And we raced those for a while, and I finally ran. I think it was in 2011. I ran an 870 at 170 in a Honda Civic in a quarter mile. And according to the data logger, the front tires were still spinning when I crossed the line. And I was told, if you pull the parachute, you want to make sure you go through the line and you're under acceleration when you pull the chute. So I pulled the chute, and the data logger said I was going 190 miles an hour when the chute hit. And I would like to claim that I'm a big, strong, badass dude. Yeah, that's no big deal. I'm telling you, I was never so happy in my life not to be going 190 miles an hour in a Honda Civic. I mean, that car was designed to deliver pizza affordably. That's what a Honda Civic is for. We still have a lot of them. I still have a lot of that stuff, but I am so happy to not be doing that drag racing stuff. And then we went road racing them for a while. That was a hoot. I like doing that.
That looks like a lot of fun. I remember you road raced them, and then now you're getting into motorcycles as well, or have been into motorcycles. You just have your hands into everything.
Mostly, you know what I want to do more than anything? I just want to get back to my art. I did a lot of metal art for a while, and I really enjoy doing that kind of stuff. And it doesn't take up too much time. And I just like making creative things. And that's what and that all goes back to the RC thing. That's what started it. When I was telling you that story about I took a fishing tackle box and I cut the bottom out of it, made a bumper. I just like to make stuff.
Okay.
And you want to be out in the shop and you're making cool stuff. And, I built a huge, it took me 400 hours this one. I built this huge car, I think in 2009. I did a YouTube video series on it. And it was just me building a random huge car out of shop junk and go-kart tires. And it's huge. I think it weighs 110 pounds.
Nice.
Terrible flow, but I made every part on it. Double wishbone suspension, 10 inches of rear travel. And no CAD, nothing. I just winging it. You're like, well, tire's this big, the axle's this big, the body's this big. I guess I got to make something that's about 4 inches wide. And you're inventing steering bell cranks, and you're trying to figure out how to make a little bitty tiny servo. And this is before there were all the big servos. and you're trying to
Right.
make like a little 100-ounce-inch servo, figure out how to turn 22 pounds of tires.
Well,
And,
that's the thing. Yeah, my fifth scales are to have 2,500 ounces of torque at the wheels now.
For servo, what servo is it?
It's NSDRC. It's it runs off of a 4S battery, and yeah, so it's 2,500 ounces of torque at 0.06, and those numbers are not lies.
Wow, it's probably got one of those pinch things on it. Like, be careful, you're going to pinch and lose a finger. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah, there were times where it's like I tried holding the wheels and I had my kid turn the wheels and the back end of the truck, was going. I couldn't hold the wheels.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah.
I remember when we
so
got to 200 ounce inches, and I thought we'll never use that.
Yeah, that was huge. So I'm wearing one of your shirts right now. Do you do the artwork on your shirts?
I like that. That's my favorite one. The Yeet Cannon Boogaloo.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you wear or do you do the artwork on all your own shirts as well? Because there's a lot
used to,
of artwork.
and then I found a guy. I got a guy. And we found a guy, and he thinks like I do. Like I really like a good cartoony shirt. I like him to be crazy over the top. I don't want, just a basic shirt. I want people to look at it and go, dude, that's too much. You know what I mean? just too much. It's too many colors. And it's kind of my style. Like those three shirts, I don't know if I got to build another one now, but we did a lot of those shirts, and all three of those are my favorites. I don't know how we can top it, because there's the Yeet Cannon Boogaloo, which is the one you're wearing. Yep. Then there's the Party Crasher, which is the guy, and there's drunk animals on it. And people are like, how is that an RC shirt? I said, well, he's holding a motor. See that? And he's driving, he's smashing into stuff. And then the other one is the Slayer t-shirt. Looks like a Slayer concert.
Yeah.
The guy's he looks like a devil with big horns, and he's driving an 8th scale car. I really like that over the top stuff. I think it's because I just kind of remembered the George Barris stuff from the 60s and 70s as a kid. And I think that over the top stuff kind of sticks with me. That style.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember that. I remember a lot of that artwork from the 60s and 70s. And there was a lot of that brought into like cartoons. Like, do you remember that old comic book?
I almost worked for those people.
Really?
Yeah. Right out of high school, I was doing a lot of artwork, and I got a hold of George Trosley's phone number right out of high school. I don't remember how I got it. It was just, I figured out where the guy lived. And yes, operator, I'd like to phone for a George Trosley in Anaheim, please. And they connected me with George Trosley. And I was just trying to figure out if it was like a job I could pursue. You know what I mean? If there was any money to be had in it. Like there was, in fact, you'll see it in some of the really old Stormer ads. There's some cartoons that I drew in some of those. If you go look.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. And but this would have been in early magazines, RC News, some of that early stuff. And anyway, I got Trosley on the phone, and at the time, he said like standard panel, like in cartoons, was only going for like $300. And I'm like, God, I'm not that fast. And at the time, Sean Carey was drawn for cartoons. Trosley was drawn for cartoons. And I am so not that good. You know what I mean? I'd have been the glass guy going, well, it's better than a blank page, I suppose. I mean, it's all right. The guy's doing his best. We humor him on, little buddy. You're doing your artwork. Good job. And I don't know. I kind of wish that happened in a way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just to see what would have happened. But now I do metal art. That's kind of my favorite thing now, to weld up things. And that's my favorite thing anyway.
Was it you that was flirting with making trophies, like metal art trophies?
No, you think of the Cold Hard Art, Tom Passes.
Okay.
That guy does it. I made trophies for a while, but the problem with it is, and I made them for organizations, and I'll maybe make one for somebody now and again, but it takes so much time. I mean, it's 20, 30 hours, you know what I mean, to make a trophy.
Ooh.
And guys are like, I can print these plaques on my laser printer. They're about $4, and you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
And nobody wants to spend that kind of money. And I'm not that fast with it. I mean, they're cool, they're awesome, but you got to be able to use. And I can't knock them out quick. I love to do it.
I hate to say it, but
I just can't do it that fast.
Unless the trophy is special, we accumulate a lot over time. Okay. if it's not a first place trophy, and this isn't just in racing, if it's a second place jiu-jitsu medal, if it's this or that, it usually ends up in the garbage on the way home from wherever I'm going, like at a gas station. Because it's like a lot of like there are special races where I've taken second. I have a 5th place trophy I still have,
Yeah.
But there was special meaning behind it. I mean, but if it's not a first, it's like, man.
I've gotten rid of
Go ahead.
I've gotten rid of most of my trophies. There's like, I bet I threw away 150 pounds worth of trophies.
Yeah.
There was
what about you, Bob?
That does. My wife at the time, this is way back in the early days, I was the only person in our crew that had a CDL license. And my wife at the time, this was way back in the mid 80s, was working with a handicap, mentally handicapped. Yep. I'm searching for the politically correct word here. Anyway, she was working with them, and the Special Olympics came around, and they were trying to figure out what to do for trophies. And I had just boxed up, like, I took them completely apart down to the little marble bases and the tubes and the little dudes on the top. And it was a lot of stuff. Felt like a pickup bed, like you were saying. And so I'm like, dude, this is perfect. I can donate these to Special Olympics. What a cool thing, right?
Yeah.
And we go, and this is a really good story, actually. So we donated them to Special Olympics. I'm like, all right, what I really wanted to do, like you guys were saying, is I just wanted all this crap in the house. You know what I mean? It was finally just too much. And so we go to the Special Olympics, and the governor is there. And at that time was Mark Roscoe. And so the Montana governor's there, and he's handing out stuff. And these Special Olympian dudes put together the trophies themselves. Now, we know what a trophy looks like, right? It's the base, the tube, the dude on the top. The first one to come out, and we'd like to thank Bob Stormer, Lori Stormer, and Storm House for donating all the trophies. Dude comes out with his trophy, and it was the metal, the base, and it came up like this, and then it took a sharp left, then it went down and to the back. And look at this trophy. I'm going, I didn't even know you could put it together like that. You know what I mean? Because this is what a trophy looked like to him, right?
Yeah.
I am sitting in the back. I'm almost covering my face because the governor's looking at this catastrophe of a trophy. He's going, yeah, thanks, Bob. Good job, buddy. Way to donate some quality merch here to the Special Olympians. And so it was kind of like I was kind of making it more about me at that point. You know what I mean? I'm like, oh, God, I'm so embarrassed. And then so this dude gets up there with that bent trophy, and all of a sudden, and it kind of chokes me up now. He's crying his eyes out. Never won a trophy before in his life. And this thing that is all bent up meant so little to me at the time was the greatest thing that's ever happened to him. Oh, and I mean, it really made you think, you know what I mean? I'm kind of choking up now telling the story.
Yeah.
I mean, to think that I was so fortunate and didn't even realize it,
Right. That is a cool story.
That story really gets me every time. I ain't kidding you.
Yeah. No, definitely. I actually used to do that as a job as well, and I know exactly what you're talking about, like them how they would put things together and figure things out in their own way.
Yeah.
I used to be for like 6 months. I'm like, hey, maybe this will be a career, and it just wasn't for me. So we got some questions from earlier off of the post I made. They're wondering, Don Tolbert's wondering how your yard's been doing. He remembers you were starting.
I didn't hear the question.
How is your yard coming along? You remembers you were
man, don't even start with my lawn. All right. As dudes get older, I used to make fun of my dad or your neighbors and working on their lawn all the time. I'm like, man, I hope I never get to be that guy. No, I'm that guy. There's deer in my yard. They're pooping everywhere. And I go out. We had a bobcat last winter.
Really?
There's a bobcat in our yard. And then the hail come. And then all of a sudden I got problems with dead spots and my grass isn't growing. Now I got quack grass and crabgrass coming through, which you can't kill. And then, oh God, I just fight my lawn constantly. It hates me. My lawn hates me. I know this for a fact. I think it's a sentient being. I think my lawn goes, hey, buddy, I bet you'd love us to be green and beautiful. And I'm like, yeah, that'd be awesome. Dead. I think it bites me on purpose. I really do. I think my lawn wakes up in the morning trying to figure out how to make my life miserable. I'm confident of this fact. It's a sentient being, and I know it's out there right now plotting against me. It's a fact. I know it's a fact. I hate my lawn.
How far is your shop away from your house?
Oh, they're real close. You know, like a lot of, we used to have a bigger building, and it was so stupid. It was 50 seconds away by car. This is the dumbest thing ever. I got a big piece of land, so I just built a shop on the land next to the track. That just made a lot more sense to me. Now I can walk to work. You know, it was so dumb before. And that's a lot of small shops like that. You know, it's where you got a big piece of land, you got the track. You're like, well, that's just stupid. I put the shop here. It makes the most sense, you know?
Yeah. So that's another thing. It's like, do you have like are you just online and mail order only, or do you have like
we got good walk-in customers? In fact, I was showing pictures. This is quite a while back. I was showing pictures to AMA because we have completely different setups. You know, their setup, they're so pro, you know, and I tell everybody we are 10 pounds of crap in a 5-pound box. You know, it is just wedged in here as tight as we can get it. And it's like you remember when you were kids, you go to certain grocery stores and there'd be like cases of mushroom soup, and at the top there'd be six soups with a sign on it. That's kind of how we are, like old school case lot. Like when you walk in here, everything's out, everything's available for purchase, but we don't take everything out of the box. You know, like so it's like the 40th anniversary RC10. There's going to be 3 cases below it with 3 on top of it, with a sign that says how much the cars are. You know, everything's kind of stays boxed, with the exception of things like these. You know, like these.
Yep.
You know, you got to get those out, make stacks out of them. And then there are certain things that are better, still on a hook, old school pegboard. You know, if you got to get a lot of stuff, man, pegboard and hook is the only way to go. You can't put it in a bucket. You can't bin it. You know, it's got to be on a hook, and I don't know. I got a lot of stories about that too. I got a lot of opinions on how people make things too. How things are bagged. I'm like that old crabby guy,
Well, you're trying to make as much out of the room you got.
Yeah.
But I think it's cool
like when a new car comes out, I'm like how many in a case? And we got to figure out if we get 10, 20 cases in. I'm like, dude, that's 2-3 pallets. Now I'm thinking about where we're going to stick that. And then, maybe we got to blow up else. And it's never ending. There's always something that's got to get blowed out. There's always something. We find stuff constantly. That's how all the manufacturers know, look, if you can't find something, call. And it's not because we're good at it. It's because it just got left on a shelf way at the back. You know what I mean? And we forgot about it. We meant to do something with it. We find parts in here all the time that have been on the wall for 35 years. It just gets buried.
Yeah.
It just happens.
I've bought legitimate, like, old parts from you before. Like, I'm working, like, let's say I'm working on a vintage project and you have the spot on your website to buy it and it says 2 in stock. It's like, holy crap, no way.
Yeah. We were working on, what was I working on yesterday? Peak brushes. Somebody, the email says had 197 of this in stock. Is that right? No, unfortunately, yeah. I'm sorry.
Well, I remember when you had the Kinwald radio bag before he passed away.
Oh yeah,
and then you had like 40 of them. I'm like, how do you have 40 of them? And then this, people bought them up and they're proudly.
Yeah, they went out of stock in like a day. And the same thing happened when Earnhardt passed away.
Okay,
they were making Slicks decals, and I come to work that one day, the day after Earnhardt passed away. I went, what happened to all the Slicks decals? They just gone.
Wow.
Yeah.
We got a couple more questions here. We got an actual technical question. Aiden Burke is wondering, does thicker or thinner wire make a difference in 10 scale stock and mod?
Well, stock is stock. You don't get a wire diameter check on stock.
Yeah. I mean,
I can go over this one quickly if you like, Joe.
Yes, go for it.
Okay, so essentially, what you want is an untinned pure copper wire, and you're gonna want about a 12 gauge. That's going to be your best weight to resistance ratio for stock racing. You can go lighter as long as flexibility isn't an issue. Like when 12 scale, a pan car, or something like that. Flexibility matters. But that's what you're gonna look for. And I get this question a lot, and what people don't understand is the solder joint is actually the most resistive part of the whole thing. Like you could probably have like 100 feet of wire, and it would be less resistance than like 3 solder joints. And so, making sure your solder joints are good, making sure you use a good quality solder, making sure your joints are connected as close as they can be, and you have, good solid connection. And then clean your batteries, clean your bullet connectors, little Q-tips, rubbing alcohol. You'd be surprised how much black stuff comes off. You go through about
Right.
20 Q-tips worth real
Wow.
quick.
Yeah. Yeah. So Bob, I don't know if you know Zach, but he makes charge leads, battery warmers, all that stuff.
He owes me an order. I'm waiting
I
for my
do.
Zach stuff.
Yes, I have. It's in the queue.
Yes.
It's
Because
good looking stuff. I had never seen it before. It's great looking stuff. I can't wait to get it.
well, I started running stuff from Zach in 2017 or 2018 because he would explain this stuff to me, and I'm like, I need one set of cables, and then I would plug in the cables and I would watch the internal resistance drop because you don't realize how much resistance is in the actual charging cables. So it's like, well, was my cable bad or is my battery bad?
Oh,
So when you
good
have
point.
when you have a low resistance cable and you're getting a better internal resistance reading, it makes a big difference. In because there were times it's like I was one of the guys that just bought whatever worked, you know what I mean? And then I started running the Donathan stuff, and for the longest time I had no sponsors, and he was actually my first sponsor out of all the ones. I truly would, if my son wasn't racing, I would be probably sponsorless as well, because but with the added cost of him racing, I unfortunately need that little extra. And I'm a pretty darn good brand ambassador as well. So
I can agree to that.
yeah. Last question. Brad Maynard is wondering, Bob, what is your favorite part or product that is no longer around or available?
There's a bunch. That depends. I can even make a plausible case for my favorite tire. I could make a plausible case for my favorite RC10 chassis. I mean, there's a lot. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think you got to give a shout out to some of the guys that did really cool innovation.
Yep.
Like Victor and Victor Engineering.
Yes, that sounds
at the
very
time. That guy was so innovative at the time, when they came out with those big square chargers, the Victor, the Super Squared, and Super IQ.
Okay,
I think that was mid '80s, late '80s.
I remember seeing the Super IQ until the big Turbo 30.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah, and then the Turbo 30 was just ridiculous in itself.
Yeah. I got a great industry story about Victor too, which is fun because nobody's ever heard this story. You want to hear it? You want to hear an industry story about Victor?
Absolutely.
Oh, this is great. So when Vic was a guy that he was a real low key dude, crazy smart, and they were making speed control and all those big kick ass chargers and the Super Juniors and Squareds and all that. So he hires a guy named Harley, and Harley is their sales. And at the time, we were buying, and these chargers were crazy expensive. They were like $200, $300, $400. These Super IQs. Yep. And we were never ordering more than, say, I don't know, 5 a week. 6 or 7 every couple of weeks. I mean, they were expensive. And so Harley calls us up. He says, "Hey, man, listen, Vic's got a great idea for a sale." And I'm like, "All right, man, I'm in for a sale. What do you got?" And I'm sure Vic did the math and said, well, he's never ordered more than 10. So in theory, if I do this sale, not likely to order more than 10. So the sale from Vic is this. Harley goes, Vic says if you order 1, it's 1%. If you order 5, it's 5% off. And if you order 10, it's 10% off. He said, how many you need? And I said, I'll take 100. And then there's this long, and they hadn't thought it out, and there's this long 15-second pause at Harley, and he goes, I'm going to get with Vic on that sale. I think we maybe think that now, and that's fair enough. He maybe call me back, How many you need? I said, I'll take 100. And I'm sure Vic in his own mind, I don't even know if that guy's still around, but in his own mind, he's like, well, no way. They'll take 12 or 15, give them 15% off. That seems like that'd be a good sale, something like that. I don't know. I like that story a lot. There was a lot of that kind of cool stuff back in the day. And, like my stories are different from everybody else's stories because I'm in the middle of it. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like if Port or Joel Johnson or somebody tells a story, it's different from when the racer tells a story versus when a manufacturer tells a story. And I'm kind of in the middle of the group. Like the people that we would talk to at Associated were not the same people that, everybody else talked to.
Right.
And those are such great stories. Like the guy I talked to the most at Associated with just recently retired was old Pete. He was their OEM guy, or I'd talk to Reedy, or or I'd talk to Gene. Gene gave me his phone number, and I'd call him at home, which I thought was crazy. I'm like, this is so cool. Gene gave me his phone number. I can call him at home. This is amazing. And I'd have been like, I don't know, 22 years old or something. Yeah, just a punk. And I'm calling Gene Hustings at home, and he was such a great dude to me. I mean, he was such a nice guy. And I come to find out, it wasn't that he was just nice to me. He was nice to everybody. But he made me feel special. I always thought that was kind of cool, Turned out he was like that to everybody. He was just a great dude.
Yep.
I liked him.
I mean, that was, and again, going back to the Vintage Clash, it was super cool to interview a lot of those guys. Although I did make an ass of myself a little bit with Disco Dean Carnes because I don't watch Street Outlaws.
Yeah.
I know him as late 90s pro racer. That's how I know him. And I'm like, so I turn to him, I'm like, so what do you do for a living? And he looks at me just shocked. I'm like, I don't know the guy. And then one of my another one of my RC buddies who's super into that show is texting me like, what the he just
You're such an ass.
Yeah, he's like, "Oh, do you not know that guy?" I'm like, I don't know him from that show. I know him from racing. I don't know him from TV.
Yeah.
And
see, and I know him for the opposite reason. I didn't know he was an RC guy.
Okay.
So when I saw him sitting there, I went, "Oh, great! Let's just bring in some random dude trying to get some publicity. Bring this crazy dude up to Street Outlaws that nobody's ever heard of before." And I was a little indignant about it. Then I went up to talk to him. He's just the greatest dude. He knew who I was, which was cool, and it's just a great dude. We hit it off right away. I like that guy a lot. Disco Dean is legit.
He is super nice guy.
Yeah, great dude.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Well, Bob, we've been going for a little over an hour and a half. We could go for probably another 3 hours, but man, I got to get up in the morning. And Zach, Zach's an hour ahead of us. So,
and he's got to work on my order. The guy.
Yes, we are still on track for your order.
All right. I'm excited to get that stuff in there. I think we're going to get rid of some other cables and get into that one zone. Every spring, we try and tidy things up. We have too many part numbers, and we're going through Associated right now. We're going through A, and this isn't any kind of a pitch because I'm losing money on this stuff. But if you go to our website, go to the deals of the day, everything on there I'm losing money on, but we're blowing it out. So take a look.
I got one more question for you. So you have your Stormer Hobbies eBay store. Do you have a Bob Stormer eBay store, or is it all just sold out of the Stormer Hobbies?
We tried to separate that, and guys have kind of figured out what the other one is.
Yep.
The vintage one, guys have kind of figured it out. But it's not just me on that one. That's there's a group of 4 people that submit to that. Like we had a guy that was helping us clear out bodies for a while. And there is no money in bodies on eBay. It's a disaster. and
I know.
he was and he was helping us blow out. I gave him all the bodies. I said, "Tell you what, whatever you get, I'll split it with you." And he did all the work, and it cleaned off. I mean, like 100 feet of shelving for us, and that was real helpful. And we're gonna have to do that again too, because bodies. Just because we stock it doesn't mean it's going to be a good seller,
Right.
And or it falls out of favor quickly.
Right. Especially touring car, like Zach talks about it constantly.
Oh, it's terrible. Yeah.
It's the body of the week.
Bad right now. Right now it's crazy.
If we were to go back here where there's touring car bodies, I could show you huge stacks of touring car bodies from 4 years ago, and you're going, how many is that? Well, there's 16 of them there now. We started with 20, so we sold 4, and now we have the 16 we got to dump off, or the 24 or whatever it is. And it happens constantly.
Oh, and vintage bodies too. Like I have a S&K Air body.
Ooh, that's nice.
It is, but it's not worth anything. So it's
you can't afford to sell it.
Yeah, I might just put it on the LXT I got sitting around.
Yeah, that vintage Fox I raced at the J Concepts race.
Yep.
Dom's Warrior body I found on a shelf in the back, and I went, holy mackerel, this body's probably worth like $100. And I look, it's like $30, and shipping would be free. And I'm like, I'm running it. Put it on the car.
Wait, one more question. Do you have any of those old cool MRP bodies that made your RC10 look like a Tyco turbo hopper?
I might. There were some sprint car bodies. I raced for MRP when they first were doing their thing. That was Bob Welch, and he was a Pacific Northwest guy. We would bump into those guys. In fact, Hodap forgot about this. He raced with us in the Pacific Northwest for a while, up at a place called Dirt Power in Spokane.
Yep.
And he would apparently he didn't hardly remember because he was like 14 or something like that. But yeah, I got pictures of Hodap at a race when he's just a wee Hodap. You know what I mean? He's there with his family and they're racing. He had a big curly hair.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Anyway,
right,
MRP is from that area, so that's why that was topical.
Gotcha. All right, Bob. Well, I appreciate you coming on. I love all the stories, and we got to figure out how to do this one again. So, let's end this here. I'm Joe Zer Jr., and with me was my co-host Zach Donathan and our guest Bob Stormer, and we have ran out of talent. Have a good night, guys.